Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Behind the Clickers podcast, the show where every week we're coming here to talk HBO's The Last of Us. I'm your host, Michael Thomas. Joining me for this special episode is, of course, Ryan and Jack coming back to the chatter after. Guys, this is a show Brandon and I have been doing for 10 weeks now, but this is our opportunity to talk to you. What were your thoughts on The Last of Us Season 1? I'm going to start with you, Jack, since this is your first time here talking The Last of Us with us. This is a spoiler-filled discussion, so go on. Let us know what you thought.
I thought it was pretty good. It's definitely the first, I guess, great video game adaptation, though. Now maybe that says a little bit more about the source material, but I thought it was pretty great. It was interesting to gauge people who hadn't played the game, what their reactions were, because, for example, my girlfriend, she and I watched it. She had never played the game, and she really liked it. I had a coworker who I think played like the first hour, but he's been watching the show, so he really liked it. My boss at work also hadn't played it, really liked it. So it was great hearing that reaction too, and seeing how they were guessing where the story was going and what was going on with the characters. But I thought it was pretty great. The performances are great. Production values were just insane. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I can't wait for season 2 and the 3 years it'll be until we get it or something.
So you said that this is the first great video game adaptation. What does that mean to you? Because we've had a lot of bad ones. Like, what makes it hit that sweet spot that these other ones really couldn't do? I guess is my question for you.
I think it's an understanding of like with the sorry, Mike, 1 second. With how the source material I think operates though. Last of Us as a game, it's a game, yes, but it's also a very narrative heavy, very cinematic video game in that sense though. The show understood that these are two different mediums, but like it took the strengths of the show, the characters, the interplay, and just those really like tense moments of just panic. It's like, oh shit, there's an infected coming our way. What do we do? And figured out how to translate that to screen though, because it could have very easily have just been like, here's all the cutscenes in live action. It could have very easily have been just that, but thankfully it wasn't. So.
True. I agree there.
Yeah.
Ryan, this is going to be interesting to hear your perspective because as far as I can remember, I think you mentioned you didn't play the Last of Us games, right?
I got through about 25% of the first one because I love the look of the game. And of course, I respect the story wholeheartedly, but it just frustrated me because to take 2 steps and all of a sudden 100 clickers descend on you and you're just have to start all over again. So it was a test of my patience. That's all I will say. But in terms of the show itself, I have a short list of video games that I would like to see be adapted. On that list was stuff like Assassin's Creed and The Last of Us. And when I heard this was announced, I was like, okay, I'm interested. And then when I heard HBO was going to be doing it, I was like, all right, now I'm really interested. And now that I have completely finished season 1, I can definitely say that I have not loved a TV show this much since I started Breaking Bad. And I started it after its initial run. I bought all the DVD sets and I binged them all one at a time. And I have not loved a TV show, that being The Last of Us, since I first started Breaking Bad. I think this is just... I said, and I can't remember where I said this show is doing laps around every other TV show going today, and it is like mid-January. We are currently in mid-March, and I don't see any other show this year or in the years after this topping this in terms of quality.
Dang.
That is very high praise. And, I guess for me, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but this is a story that I have known for 10 years now of my life. And so it is just really fascinating hearing your perspective and hearing other critics' perspective on The Last of Us, because I don't know, Jack, when you actually played the game. I assume around when it came out.
I actually my history of The Last of Us is I was aware of it. I knew it. I knew the story, knew all the stuff. I remember. We'll talk a bit more. I remember the ending being talked about to death, but I didn't actually play it until because I didn't own a PS4 until about 2017. So that's when I played it for the first time.
Nice.
And that's definitely an experience I won't forget. Yes, but I was very much aware of it though, and I remember they played all the ads in like the movie theaters and stuff, so I definitely was aware of it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this story has been a part of my life for so long. It also created a strange disconnect with the show for me a little bit because there was a lot of deja vu moments, not in a bad way, but a lot of like, yeah, I remember this, but I remember feeling the initial impact. Like when Sarah dies, right, in episode 1, I saw so many people heartbroken and devastated by that. And for me, it's like we had 20 minutes of Sarah backstory, and I think I was a little disengaged because I'm like, I know this kid's gonna die. I can't really feel anything for it.
I think it's. I see your point there. It's one of those things where it's like half the time I got a big dumb grin on my face. I'm like, oh, it's just like the thing from the game, and then I'm like, oh, it's just like the thing from the game. Oh no, something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, and so it's like that's again though the fact that people were able to get that emotion and get that the same feeling that I had when Sarah does die in the game. I'm glad that they were able to accomplish that, but for me there was a small disconnect with it because I wasn't invested in Sarah as a character, even though Nico Parker, fantastic job as Sarah. And I loved her chemistry with Pedro Pascal and then Gabriel Luna. I thought they were great. I could honestly just watch a show about the Millers and be happy. But that first episode, for example, for 20 minutes, I'm interested to see where they go because it's new material. But also, there's this part of me that's like, this kid's gonna die. I don't want to get too attached, and like I felt myself kind of resisting it, like, do not get attached to this family. They're not gonna last, which I think is a strange thing to have. That usually only happens in like anime or something, where anime gets ripped straight from the manga. So seeing The Last of Us, like you were saying, Jack, they're doing the thing from the game, but also doing the thing from the game kind of lessens some of the emotional weight that I think I should have felt. And so that's where we get into this weird crossroads for me of how much is too much as far as doing what the game did. I just wanted your guys' thoughts on that.
No, I think it's a fair point. I think I was having a conversation with someone else about it though. He said he was comparing it to the out of all things the live action Disney remakes though. He said to him what he was sort of arguing was that the show kind of understood how to use many iconic imageries, lines, and stuff like that. It actually knew how to use them and understood sort of where the impact was coming from, though. Because, like he said, like I remember Sarah's death scene in the show. Like my girlfriend, I remember watching it with her. She had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah,
like she knew something bad was going to happen, though. And I just remember just seeing her face. She was just in tears when it happened, though. But that just speaks sort of like to the power of the material, though, and what it can do.
Exactly.
So I think it's just a testament to I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Just it understood what it was doing, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So.
It knew its audience. Like the HBO audience isn't just a bunch of gamers like us, for example. Like Ryan, like, did you have any thoughts on that take at all?
I see where you're coming from, but I think one of my favorite movies of all time is The Shawshank Redemption. And that was based off of a Stephen King short story, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Another one of my favorite movies is Jurassic Park, adapted from the book by Michael Crichton. I've read both Jurassic Park, the book, and seen the movie numerous times. So there were dramatic liberties taken in that movie. And it's still one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's fine. So my exposure to the Last of Us game is incredibly limited, especially when it comes to you, Mike, and to you, Jack. So I was just watching this just purely as as someone who knew the premise, had played some of it, but wasn't super intimate with what was going on. And I know that this season took out the spores. I know that they weren't wearing masks all the time because I know in the game there were certain areas where spores get in you and poison you and kill you that way. So they had to wear masks in order to get around there, and they got rid of that. Honestly, we don't see a ton of the clickers in this show if you really think about it. We see one bloater, and that's pretty much it. So so it was surprisingly limited. I didn't think it was going to be as limited as it was, but I think it was incredibly effective.
I saw a good tweet about that. This essayist I follow, he says when the infected do appear, usually something bad ends up happening though.
Yeah.
Like you said, I found it funny with the bloater. He was played by this stunt guy, and everyone started thirsting after the bloater immediately after he showed up.
Like I was just rooting for him to kill Kathleen. I'm like, get her. And I know I'm probably a bad person for rooting for that, but
yeah,
I was sick of her. Not the actress. I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
I wanted the character off of my screen, and
I think
that's what ended up happening. When I saw that bloater, I turned into Kevin Kline from Wild Wild West, and now we have to run.
Oh man,
it's funny you're talking about sort of things that were done differently though. I remember this was funny. After the first episode aired, I saw like so many tweets about this. People were saying, "Oh, why does Joel get the big shiny gun? You don't get that till the end of the game, but he gets it within 5 minutes." Though.
That's a funny thing to do.
I'm like, of all the changes made, this is the thing people are fixating on.
Oh, that's nothing. Wait till they discover things that were in the game, but they didn't realize it. It just The Last of Us is woke. It's like, guys, you didn't pay attention. That's okay.
The lack of spores didn't really bother me though. That's a thing in the game, but it's not like a mechanic. Whenever it happens, like it's part of the story. Characters automatically put their gas masks on and whatnot.
There's no animation where if you forgot to press square, your mask on, you die. It just kind of happens. So
I mean, I like how they change it up a bit though, because like there's that moment I like in the game where they're in the spore area and Joel's just looking at Ellie. He's like, "What the hell are you doing? How are you alive?" But I like how they change it in the show too. She just gets bitten again. She's just like, "Ah, shit." That hurts.
It does make that moment funny.
Yeah.
We're talking about changes, right? I think it makes sense to kind of stay along those lines for now, since we're already talking about it. One thing that I really loved about this season was the cold opens. And Jack, you and I were kind of talking about this privately earlier in the season. Episode 1, we have the cold open with Sarah. Like, they actually, I think, was very cool how they made it feel like she was the main character. Like, we followed her for a good 20 to 30 minutes before the event happens. Episode 2, we start to see the rest of the world and what it looked like from that point. Episode 3 was pretty much just an entirely original story. How did you think that worked in the case of the show, Ryan? I know that you may have seen chatter online about some of these since you didn't play the entire game yourself. But I want your guys' thoughts on like the new material that they added and like kind of the world building a lot of these episodes did at the start.
I had no issue with it personally. I think it was all handled pretty well. The cold open, the very first scene with I can't remember this actor's name. It's the dude who plays Jonathan in the Mummy movies. He's the brother to you all know who I mean, right? And like, he's the guy.
Which scene was it?
The very first scene of the very first episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the scientists,
The newscasters, and
that
the scientists.
was so haunting. Like that. And then the next episode, we see, I believe it was, I want to say Sri Lanka. I don't think it was Sri Lanka.
No, it was Indonesia. Yeah.
Indonesia, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was in Indonesia, and when she says bomb everything, I'm like, well,
chilling.
Oh, it's just
that is terrifying.
I was saying this to Mike because I really like those two scenes because there was a lot of I was watching all these good little essays on the show. Everyone was fixating on those two scenes, saying just what makes them so horrifying, especially the very first scene where it's like the scientists in the 60s of just like they're just kind of setting the stones of like, yeah, they don't know what's going to happen though, but like I like that they use just real world science of like, yeah, if the Earth gets slightly warmer, this will happen.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you kind of just envy them because they're in a spot like the outbreak's not going to happen for another like almost 40 years for them. Though they're like, hey, we can just. You're kind of just like, hey, they're safe.
Yeah, that era they lived a happy life and probably died in 2000 or 1999 and never saw this happen.
But yeah, like you said, Ryan, just that second episode where it's like she's at a restaurant, she's brought in, has to look at this dead body, and even she gets freaked out when she pulls out the tendrils and they're still moving and stuff. And I had to like, God, I remember my girlfriend and I were watching. We had to pause it because I was just like, I think I'm gonna vomit. Maybe this is disgusting.
Yes,
and like you said, it is
alien-like, very Ridley Scott's Alien-like. If I can be so bold and make that comparison.
No, it's good, and just like you said, when she's just like, just bomb the city, I'm just like, that'll do it.
I love the payoff of that too, though, right? Because we have Ellie, Tess, and Joel walking through the city, walking through Boston. We see craters of where they tried, and clearly it didn't work because the world still went to hell.
Yeah,
and so I think that the world building from those moments really just kind of elevates the show in a way, because the show is always going to be about Joel and Ellie, and we'll finally talk about them. We've been here for almost 20 minutes and haven't mentioned the two main characters hardly at all. But I just love the world building that they do with that, and seeing how different groups or characters react to it. Like, especially when we get to episode 3 and we see Nick Offerman is just hunkered down and he's like, hey, I'm safe. And he's just living his best life, laughing at people get electrocuted on his fence. And it's like, okay, these are cool. I really dig them. But okay, let's talk about Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey.
Yeah. They were great. Pedro Pascal is in a perfect world. Pedro Pascal would be everyone's reluctant dad because actually just to sort of one last little point about just adaptations or whatever, though. I saw this good tweet the other day, though. Someone argued saying the Last of Us TV show is a good example of why the game almost didn't really need to be a game at all. And sort of argued that The Mandalorian is a case of a television show that really just wants to be a video game. And it's funny how Pedro Pascal is basically smacked in the middle of both of them.
You know, that's
because the Mandalorian plays out like a single player video game half the time, where you're just being railroaded from set piece to set piece, though.
He also has side missions where he's got to deliver a thing and then go back to another planet.
Exactly.
To be honest with you, I never considered that before.
Yeah.
And now that I'm thinking back on season 1 and 2, I'm like, yeah, that kind of does make sense.
But no, he's great. I like that he just has enough of that. Many were praising him about this, where he has enough of that tough dude like persona to him, but there's also moments where it's like it's him just crying his eyes out. Like, I love the scene in the 5th episode where it's just like he's just talking to Tommy and just how much he's just complete, pardon my French, fucked up over the last 20 years. And you can point to the exact moment of when it happened, though, but then like he realizes, wow, I've become a horrible person. I've murdered countless people. I've done God knows what just to survive, though. And it's just he's trying to get Ellie all the way out to who knows where, if this will even work, if they'll even make it. And he just has a moment where he just has to break down and just kind of accept his fate to an extent. So
it's such a good moment. And I love that you brought that up specifically, right? Because that is when I was watching the show, I'm like, give him all of the Emmys, all of the awards.
It's also a moment that's just not in the game too. So
it's not. That's one of the moments where the show fully stands on its own, because a video game can't, like, I guess they could have made that a cutscene, but you really need to say what you need to say and then get back to the next set piece, because that's what a game is. And so that, to me, is one of the highlights of the show, not just because it's different from the game, but because it's built upon what the show has done up to that point. everything Joel is talking about, everything he's crying about, we've seen it happen in action. We see him lose Sarah, we see him lose Tess, we see him fail Ellie, we see them almost get killed. They get ambushed by Sam and Henry because he can't hear from on the side he's accidentally rolled over on. He made sure to set a trap to catch them, and he still failed. And he wakes up with a gun in his face.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Sam and Henry end up dead right before they meet Tommy anyway. So I love how all of that is built up, and you see him slowly break and crumble as the show goes on. Ryan, what did you think about Pedro Pascal in the role of Joel?
I mean, it was perfect casting. I mean, Pedro Pascal, he is the daddy. Let's just give him the crown and cape. He is the daddy. But,
clip that, Twitch.
but to kind of bounce off of what Jack was saying, Joel is kind of a monster, but in a weird roundabout way, there's still enough good in him to actively try and do the right thing. I love that. I love the spirit of that. Despite the fact that he really doesn't truly know like where he is taking Ellie, and well, it turns out maybe their motives weren't the best anyway, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. He still does it anyway because it is the right thing to do. And as we see other characters in this show, how despite how everything has just fallen apart and civilization just doesn't exist anymore, that reality has corrupted them and basically turned them into just not even human beings anymore. The humanity has completely left them, and they are just reduced to their most basic instincts. So Joel has done terrible things, but he makes a solid attempt to try and do the right thing by those that he cares about. I love that. I love the spirit of that.
No, I think that's very well said, and I like what you said there about like just you put people like you put as you said, everyone's just basically now stripped down to almost just like their almost like lizard brain, their survival instinct, so to speak, though.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're going to be making choices that just not exactly they would do. And like that starts early off with Joel as like, killing the neighbor because the neighbor's infected. So, no, that's a very good point. I like that. So.
Joel makes incredibly difficult choices, but he makes them for the right reasons. He doesn't let the world around him corrupt him. He accepts it for what it is and faces it head on. That's why I think this portrayal is just excellent.
Yeah, they made Joel. It's interesting understanding. One, we're not going to spoil The Last of Us Part 2 because Ryan, I don't think you know anything about that, and the show hasn't covered it. So for the people listening, we're not going to spoil that for you. Yeah. But one thing I really loved what the show did, and I want your take on this, Jack. They make Joel more likable, I would say. Like Joel is still like an a-hole in both versions, but they give him a lot, like the moment where he's breaking down on Tommy and like showing vulnerability, or we have moments in the last episode, completely original to the show, where he is essentially saying, "I love you, Ellie," in the most Joel way possible.
Yeah.
I feel like the show kind of goes out of their way to make him more endearing, I guess, than he is in the game. And that kind of makes the ending a little bit more shocking, but also I think inadvertently makes us team Joel probably more than we would have when we played the game. If that makes sense.
No, I get that. I like that they included I think it was in one of the Last of Us comics, I think, though, where it's like Joel talks about his suicide attempt, though. Hence that little scar he has on the side of his face, though. Because I don't think that was that in the game? I don't remember. Mike, can't hear you.
Yep. The scar is in the game, but I don't think they ever explained.
Yeah.
We just assume he got roughed up.
Yeah. But I remember reading that somewhere, though, saying Joel thought about suicide after Sarah had died, though. I remember reading that somewhere, though. Then when he starts talking about it, I was like, oh, wow, they went there. Okay. But stuff like that, like, yes, they make him more likable in the sense that they just kind of like, it's not so much like put this man out of his misery. It's more just like I think this guy just needs a hug. Like
True, very true.
he's like the Sandman in Spider-Man 3. It's like he's not a villain. He just needs a hug. Like
He just wants to help his daughter. That's all he wants.
oh my god. How The Last of Us 2 is just Spider-Man 3, but done right.
Oh, that'll be a video essay.
Oh boy. I can't wait
For
to
those
watch
for
that.
those listening, we'll write this essay for very cheap.
Mm-hmm. We'll do it for you, IGN. We got you. But no. Yeah, I think that I don't know if that's so much the writing or if that's just Pedro Pascal is just a likable dude that he can murder anybody and we'll still root for him. It could be a bit of that too, honestly.
I think it's a combination of the two, really, though. It is the material and him just being able to make it shine through, though, and just man, that a lot of power comes out of that mustache of his. I'll say that, though.
He's daddy for a reason. Anyway, Bella Ramsey as Ellie. We're gonna circle back to Joel in a bit, but I do want to make sure we talk about, the main character of the entire franchise, Ellie.
Yeah.
So
to all the dickheads who said she couldn't be Ellie, I hope you stub your toe everywhere you go because you all owe Bella Ramsey an apology.
Wait, there were people who were saying that?
Oh god, people were
No.
like losing their minds saying she looks nothing like Ellie. I'm like, what is that?
Well, to those people, I say, I hope you step on a Lego brick in the middle of the night. But that
And
was-
then stub your toe.
that too.
step on the Lego
Yeah.
brick, trip, stub your toe. There you go.
But no, she's great. I knew right from the first scene she was in when she was that I love that bit where she's like count to 10. She's like 7, 8. Fuck you. I'm like, oh, I'm like she's perfect.
That I tell you, when I had my screeners, right? We only had like one trailer come out, and as soon as I got that scene, I'm like, "That's it. She's got it. She's Ellie. Sold. Perfect delivery."
No, it was great. She was great. I like that. This is the thing I always liked about Ellie in the game that I think she captures so well. Is that she's very much just a kid, like when she's at the hotel and starts goofing around at like the desk and stuff. It's like, she's maybe heard tales of hotels back in the day, but here she is finally in one. It's safe. Let's just ring the bell and just be goofy.
Just
I like
her on
that.
the escalator, like come
Exactly,
on.
yeah. I did find the in the one episode Left Behind, they're just like the computer. What was the joke? The computer takes a screenshot, and they're just like, "The hell's a screenshot? What's a computer?"
Yes.
I like that. That was funny.
Yeah, she made all of those bad puns worth it, honestly. I think her chemistry with Pedro Pascal was always great. But I really think like the last quarter of the season, when we do get the Left Behind episode, we see her face David alone. She's really able to shine because Pedro Pascal, he's just such a charismatic, big presence on screen that it always kind of felt like she was playing second fiddle in a way Ellie kind of does because she has to follow Joel's lead. But I think Bella is just so good that even in those moments, her and Tess, her and Joel, she can still hold her own with those actors. Anna Torv was great as Tess too.
Yeah.
I loved everything about her performance. What about you, Ryan?
I mean, I mean, she's fantastic. I mean, she definitely nailed it. Two pieces of evidence for this. Number one, and I can't remember the name of the episode, but it's her standalone episode with Storm Reed, and I can't remember
Left Behind.
her character.
That's Left Behind,
name.
yeah. Riley.
Oh, that is
yeah.
Left Behind. Thank you. But yeah, that entire episode ranks among my favorite of the season. At first, I was like, how long are we going to be here? But then it won me over because, like Jack was saying, she's just a kid. She's just a child. And she's just been thrust into this world where there is no mercy, pretty much. And the David episode, I mean, perfectly highlights that. And I'm not going to lie, I got a lot of pleasure when she was stabbing him in the face with that knife and like doing it over and over again. I'm like, get him, get him, get him. And I was like, I was rooting for that a bit too hard, but it was fantastic.
just to sort of jump off your point there, I like what you had. That I like how you phrase that though. Yes, Ellie is just born into this broken like world though. Like,
Yeah.
I like how I think Riley points out though Fedra is basically just a bunch of fascists, but Ellie sort of has this moment where she's just like, yeah, they suck, but what else are we supposed to do? Like, who's gonna run the system? Who's gonna run the world though? And just to add on to that, when she runs into David, who's just a very fundamentally broken individual, though, to put it lightly.
Oh, David's the worst.
Just to be like, yeah, she's 14 dealing with all this, though. Like, we won't talk about part 2, but a lot of her actions in part 2 suddenly become, you start to get it, I guess we'll say. So.
Yeah, like
we're not going to spoil part 2. Yeah,
we're not going to spoil part 2, but this world sucks.
Yeah,
and this show goes out of its way to remind you that it sucks on like a daily basis, episode by episode.
One thing. Well, just one thing I found interesting about the Left Behind episode, and I thought there was an interview with Neil Druckmann. He said that the DLC, because in the game, the DLC sort of cuts back between like present and the past, though. Ellie's sort of in this abandoned mall. She's looking for medical supplies for Joel. And it keeps cutting back between that and her with Riley in the mall and stuff, though. What he said, originally the DLC was envisioned as basically just how the episode plays out, though. But they thought that might be a bit boring. They thought they need some action, so they added the stuff of just Ellie going through the mall looking for medical supplies, though. So it's kind of interesting to sometimes think that in many ways this show is kind of like a take 2 of The Last of Us. So you take ideas that might not have come to fruition, or might not have played out, just the stuff that can play out differently, though. And I think that was a good example of like, because that episode, to my knowledge, came out exactly as they initially envisioned it. So
this is something I was telling Brandon last week on our season finale review. I was saying that The Last of Us is essentially just the director's cut, right? And I think that speaks to what you were just saying, because we get the last episode, we have that final cold open with Anna, and she's giving birth to Ellie, and that is something that Neil Druckmann has said he wrote a short story for. It was like supposed to be a comic, but it never came to fruition. And so he's like, I'm reusing that and repurposing it for the show. Yeah. And so that's another thing of all of the things that he has worked on that he couldn't make work in a video game, it found its way here. And that's why I think those moments are so seamless and they work so well, because he always envisioned it to be that way. And I think that's just really good on him being a showrunner on this project, right?
Yeah, it's just a case of just like thinking all these things, just not limiting yourself. Like I know people who, like, I knew one person who freaked out the moment they changed literally anything. That was saying, "Well, can't it just be like the game?" I'm like, if this was exactly 1-to-1 like the game, you'd be bored shitless, frankly.
Just play the game. It's on PS5.
Just play the game. Yeah,
they remade it. Go play it.
But the thing I like about the Anna episode, and by the way, when I learned that Ashley Johnson was playing Ellie's mother, I'm like, that is stupidly meta. Like, just,
it is.
She literally gives birth to her character. I'm like, it's like Hideo Kojima's telling you to calm down. So.
When I learned that Ashley Johnson, the voice of Ellie in the game, is playing Ellie's mom here, I was like, I don't know, that kind of is like if Dee Bradley Baker was playing like a clone in the Clone Wars TV show and was like interacting. I don't know. Like I said, it's
like how David Hayter in Metal Gear Solid, he plays Snake, but he also plays his genetic predecessor, Big Boss, as well. So
yes,
but when the two meet, they're different voice actors, but go figure.
What's funny is Ashley Johnson, love her to death. No matter what role she plays, she sounds exactly the same. So she just sounds like Ellie this entire episode. It's so funny.
I blew my friend's mind a couple of years back. I was working at this golf course. I'm like, yeah, Ashley Johnson, she was also Gretchen in Recess. And he's just like, what?
Whoa.
Yeah, that blows your mind.
Yeah, she was Gretchen in Recess, and you start. And when I first learned that, I'm like, yeah, I can hear that pitch.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I
yeah.
can't unhear that, and that is both cool and annoying. Thanks for that, Jack.
but that episode also confirmed I had this long running theory about Ellie for the longest time, and I figured like, okay, so I always wondered like, why exactly is Ellie immune? And this episode did exactly as I thought it was going to. It's like, oh yeah, I guess her mother was infected and gave birth to her, and I guess that because there is a bit of real life science to that though. You heard of like pregnant mothers who had COVID, gave birth to their children, and their children were born with antibodies or something like that though. So there is some real world science behind it though. I do question, considering Ellie was born literal seconds later, if that would have actually have done enough, but oh well.
You know,
Look,
I was thinking about that, and I don't know where I got this from in my head, but it kind of reminded me of how Blade was born, how his mom got bitten by a vampire, and then he's born a daywalker that he has vampire powers, but he can walk in the sunlight. I know that is such a weird comparison.
No, I'm mad because it makes all the sense in the world. So I can't wait for The Last of Us Part 3. Ellie can control the clickers and infect it now.
That's funny. But I like that, and I am glad they got a couple of the actors from the game in the show. I think it was a little cheating. They got what's her name? Yeah, they got her to play the same character. I'm like, that's cheating. You can't do that.
They got Meryl Dandridge to play Marlene, and I'm gonna be honest, she was great.
Mm-hmm.
She played the character exactly like she would anyway, but she was great.
I like they got I forget his name. He plays Tommy.
Jeffrey Pierce, I believe.
Jeffrey Pierce, that's it. Yeah, I like they got him. And yeah, I love that one tweet. I think I sent it to you though. The episode Troy Baker was in. It's like millions of women had to listen to their boyfriend lean over and say, "He plays Joel in the video game,"
and he gets killed by Ellie.
Which is poetic. That is poetic. Yes.
Kind of like if Yuri Lowenthal played Ben 10 in a live action something.
Yuri. You're not too old. You're gonna play Sasuke. Sasuke.
But one thing I liked in that, because sometimes you see that sometimes where it's like they'll put in for some movies or shows or something, they'll put like cameos of like older actors from like as cameos or something like that. I like that they play roles, and I like that it doesn't feel distracting. It feels like appropriate in a way though. Like I said, it might have been a little meta of Ashley Johnson playing like Ellie's mother, but like it worked for what it was. It was only like a scene, but it worked, I thought. The funniest response I saw to who's this? Someone saying hello, cute. The funniest response I saw to Troy Baker's appearance was that like everyone in David's group is butt ugly, but Troy Baker's the only good looking one.
I do find it interesting how they utilize Troy Baker. One, making him the direct antagonist for Ellie, while also not making him David. Like, in that entire setup, David is trying to promote Ellie to his number 2, his right hand, and maybe more. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to get this channel taken down.
Oh, where'd Ryan go?
I don't know, but we're going to keep talking until he comes back. So I think making Troy Baker's character James the foil, essentially, because again, David's trying to bring Ellie into the fold, and he's just opposed the entire time. Welcome back, Ryan. Don't know what happened there.
Sorry about that, y'all.
Right.
You're good. But yeah, so the fact that they were at odds the entire episode, because like he's vying for David's trust and attention, and like he doesn't want to lose his position, I thought was a really interesting way to use Troy Baker of all characters. And that's, I think, like you were saying, Jack, that's why it was kind of easy for them to be mostly seamless, to where they're not here to be, hey, look, you know this guy. They're just characters in the story who have happened to have been in the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to utilize them, because they're actors. They're here to just play characters. Simple as that.
No, that's a very good way to put it, though. His death was kind of satisfying, though, getting a machete to the neck, though. So
satisfying.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump around a little
where,
bit.
Where are we gonna talk about Bill and Frank at one point though? I feel like we're I don't know.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, there we go.
So let's jump in. It's kind of a hard spot to slide them into the conversation of the season review because they were very much a standalone episode that didn't have a lot of connections to the main plot. But we got to talk about this one.
Yeah.
Long time. It's arguably the best episode of the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts, Ryan? I want to start with you with this incredible love story with Nick Offerman coming in, playing Bill, which I didn't expect him to take on the role of Bill. When they announced it, I'm like, that's unique, but I see it. And I think he killed it. What were your thoughts?
I mean, I love the episode. I mean, I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I thought the episode was great. I'm a fan of Nick Offerman, so it was nice to see him. Kind of like Ron Swanson taken to its logical extreme going on right here. I think I love the part in the episode where it's a few years after these two characters meet and are officially in a relationship. They're living together, and I believe it's Frank. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not the Nick Offerman one. It's Frank. Is like I met these two. They're really nice, and Bill's like, no, they're not coming over, and it's this whole thing. It turns out to be Joel and Tess. I don't know why I love that so much. I just love the dynamic of them basically inviting him over for a double date in the midst of the world just completely like the end game has officially wrapped up and now we're just in the aftermath of it. I don't know why I laughed so much at that, but I like that. I like the spirit of that.
I love how they do come over and they're all having a good time. Like Tess is just chit-chatting with Frank, and then you just have Joel and Bill just giving each other the death stare. And Bill just has a gun on the table, just like
it's really funny. And I don't know if it was intended to be that way, but it was some of the more lighthearted fare of the season. But I mean, just the stuff at the piano and just leading into the whole thing. When I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, okay, either Bill or Frank are going to meet their end in this, and it is going to suck. And it did, and it broke my heart.
It did.
But it was a nice piece of business, just in terms of everything that went into this episode. I have no complaints.
No, I share your thoughts too. It's just it's one of those things like it took a lot of people by surprise this episode because Bill's section in the game, because this it's completely different from how it is in the game. In the game you actually meet Bill and he talks about Frank and how he passed and how Frank was just getting kind of sick of Bill's ways and whatnot though.
They broke up. Like Frank leaves a note and says, "I never want to see you again." It's the complete opposite of what happened.
And he hangs himself. Yeah, he hangs himself, Frank. I remember, which is tragic. But to take something like that, a relationship that's just straight up not present in the game, and just turn it into a full-on episode, and many were saying it's like the opening scene. It's like the opening 10 minutes and up, but for an entire episode, basically though.
That's what G Techie is saying here, that this could have been a short film, and I agree.
It does feel
like that, Jack. Don't you?
It does feel like a standalone short film, and but it's an example of something this is something they only do once this season. I hope they do this more when they start adapting part 2. Is just taking something like that and just turning it into its own creation, though. That's what I mean by when it comes to adaptation, though, because like I said, it could have very easily have just been all the cutscenes and live action, though. But no, it's let's just straight up make a short film about these two guys finding love in the apocalypse, though.
Yes.
And I burst out laughing when Bill yells out, "The government is run by Nazis." But like you said, I like that they just invite Tess and Joel to dinner, and it was so good. It was nice seeing Tess again, because I think Amateur was really good. And just there, I do like at the end of that episode, just the little homage they have to the menu screen. You just see the open window and the curtains blowing a little bit, though, because it's kind of meant to look like the menu for the video game, which I thought was very effective, though.
It also plays as a double meaning because this is when Joel and Ellie, this is where their story actually starts. Because Tess is now gone. The adventure starts. Hit play. Let's go.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool. I love this episode. I really want us to do more of these. I don't know if we will, because Left Behind is essentially its own, again, like another bottle episode, really, where it's just two actors in one location for the majority of the show. And those two, ironically enough, have nothing to do with the original game because one is DLC, one is an original story for the show. But I think that's where the writing is kind of at its strongest because they can just do whatever they see best without having to say, we've got to get to point A to point B. We've got to have infected here. We've got to do this. We've got to make sure we get here. Yeah. They were just able to, like G-Techie's saying, like you guys were saying already, they were able to have a self-contained story and then just really focus in on these two characters, one of which being Frank, who is pretty much a blank slate. Like we know nothing about this character at all.
I saw one funny tweet though. It's like, because Frank, when he's older, someone pointed out he looks a little like Jordan Peterson in a way, though. It's like this Jordan Peterson dude making out with Nick Offerman, though. It's like, who's in some ways kind of a parody of like the overtly conservative nut job, and here they are having a full-on gay romance and everything. This episode thankfully pissed off all the right people. So
yeah. Murray Bartlett was also, again, fantastic in the role of Frank. I loved everything. I love his chemistry with Nick Offerman, too. Like, they really sold it. Like, they made this... something that Ryan mentioned at the top of the show, being invested in this group of characters. And I think that, to me, is the highlight of what The Last of Us show is that we're able to, in episode 3, meet Bill and Frank. And never see them again, but those are characters that I'm forever going to be attached to. I'm forever going to love this story. Same thing with Sam and Henry in episode 5. Same thing with Tess in episode 2. You know, like meeting these characters and being able to tell one singular story with them. I loved every single moment of it. And that to me is the highlight because Joel and Ellie are the through line, but I love traveling, meeting different characters, experiencing different stories. And all of them sell it so well to I can watch spin-offs of all of these. I will watch a Bill and Frank show. I'll do it. I'm serious.
Bill and Frank's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, like there's a good 20 years that we can play in. They can do it if they really wanted to.
Just that final dinner where he starts mixing the pills in with the wine. I'm like, I was just tragic. Like, why am I so sad? Like, I just met these people. What's just?
It's been 30 minutes and I already want to die for them.
Yeah. Just, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you guys are the ones who wanted to be here. Jokes aside.
Hey, I nagged you to be on this show, so.
So we got to talk about the ending, but we're gonna get there when we get there. Was there anything specific that you guys wanted to touch on? There's a lot that happened this season. I want to make sure you guys have the space to talk about it.
A lot of menstruation jokes I noticed throughout this, like in that episode, like Ellie is just, she finds like the pad, she finds a tampon, she's like, oh thank God. And then when she gets to Tom, and then when she gets to meets Tommy, she gets like the menstruation cap. I'm like, what's with all the menstruation stuff in this show?
I noticed that too, and I was sitting there like okay, what am I supposed to take from that?
I thought it was funny. Like it's just like one of those things where it's like an apocalypse. It's like, oh yeah, I guess this would be difficult to find. One thing I like, not just how, like you said, you meet these characters, don't really spend a lot of time with them, but you kind of just get them right away. I think one of my favorite character introductions is, I love how Tess is introduced in the first episode. You meet her, her face is just like beaten in or whatever. I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah.
She's just like, I want to go home and drink till my face stops hurting. I'm like, bravo. That's an introduction right there.
Tess is like Anna Torv's Tess is, she's great in this show. That's another expansion a little bit where in the game that is already like we're teaming up with Tess to go and take down the guys who did this and get the battery back, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole mission. The show kind of doesn't do that, but it plays around with the same idea. And those, again, are the moments of them knowing what to kind of slim down or trim down from gameplay. Just focus on the core story.
I do like that it was more implied that, like, this is something that's vaguely hinted at in the game, but I like that it's almost like Tess and Joel are a thing, kind of. Like, I like the bit where Joel's asleep in his bed, and then Tess just comes in, pushes him over, and just curls up next to him, though. It's a nice little moment, a little more heavily implied that, hey, these two are a thing, or maybe it's just the closest of their friendship or whatever, though. But I don't know, there's an interview with Anna Torv, and she said her and Pedro Pascal saw it as romantic, and I like that. It was just, finding someone in the middle of the apocalypse, I guess.
It makes sense, and it makes that end of episode 2 even more heartbreaking, right? Because Joel doesn't want to do this, but then Tess dies for it. So now he owes it for Tess to take Ellie to the end of this mission. And I think, again, we're going to get to the ending in a bit. I think that just makes their bond even stronger, because now he's like, I can't fail this kid. Because if I do, I'm not only failing Ellie, I'm also failing Tess. Which that's just a little extra pressure that they apply to Joel going forward. I thought was interesting.
I will say her death is one of the most moments, I think, of this show. So there's like the literal kiss of death, and then just explosion. It's like, what the fuck? Oh, can't hear you, Mike.
I want your guys' thoughts on that. Ryan, I'm going to toss it to you right quick. What was your interpretation of the kiss of death? Was that her just giving in to becoming infected? Because she kind of just stood there and took it. Or was that more of a the infection is already like starting to reach her, so she's already becoming one with the fungus?
I feel like she had taken stock in that moment and realized this is it for me. And so she accepted her fate, and she made the noble sacrifice and basically took out as many of those clickers as she could in one go. And so I think, like I said, I think she made the noble sacrifice. I think she was like, well, this is the end of the road for me. Might as well make it interesting. So I have a good story to tell St. Peter when I'm up there.
Yeah. I saw a good interview with Neil Druckmann was talking about the moment, though. He was saying that, in a video game, when an infected sees you, it just runs at you, though. But he thought, like, okay, well, what if it's just you came up to it? What would it do to you exactly, though? Would it still attack you, try to spread it or something, though? It is one of those moments, because I know there are some people who really hate that moment, think it's like, this is just dumb. I think it's effective because it's one, messed up, two, it's gross as hell, but three, I think what I like about it in that, it's just my interpretation, because the thing comes up, starts kissing her, but you see her hand starts fiddling on the remote. You can almost get the sense like it's kind of speeding up the process of infection, so to speak, though. But she gets just enough like pull back that she's able to detonate the bomb and whatnot, though. Her death in the game is pretty like simple. She just gets shot and dead, and that's it, though. But here it's like, yeah, let's make this great character grow out with a literal bang. So
yeah, I agree there. Ryan, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we tackle the ending of The Last of Us?
Well, I had this thought when you all were talking about how memorable Bill and Frank were, despite them only being in one episode. It kind of reminded me, kind of bringing it back where I started with Breaking Bad. What the character of Tuco Salamanca? He's only in the show 3 episodes total, and he is so memorable. You say Tuco to someone, you're like, they're scared instantly. So it really speaks to how good the writing is.
Tuco's only in 3 episodes.
I was gonna say I thought it was more, but
wow.
By my rough count, yeah.
That's I could have sworn it felt like he was in like 20 of those by how memorable that character was, but that's wild. Speaking of memorable characters, before we get to the ending of Tilu, I want to talk about Sam and Henry. I love the change of making Sam deaf. I think that, can you imagine not being able to hear in the world of The Last of Us, he's like I think that is just terrifying. Like you will never hear the clickers coming.
Yeah.
It's a whole extra layer of fear that I now have in this universe. But I think these two actors were fantastic. Go ahead,
No,
Jen. Sorry.
they were great. I think it was a brilliant move to this Henry's the younger one, right? Or
Sam's the youngest.
Oh,
Henry's
Sam.
the
Sorry,
oldest.
I don't know why I got them mixed up. I think it was a good move to have Sam be younger because in the game he's roughly the same age as Ellie. I think it was a smart move to have him be younger than Ellie because he can kind of look up to her in a way. One thing I did like, it didn't really play into the ending, but I just kind of liked the implication of it though. Ellie tries to cure him by using her blood, but it obviously doesn't work though. And I thought for a minute, though, okay, well, obviously it's going to end with Joel lying about, there's no cure and whatnot, though. But I thought for a minute, well, this moment right here of Ellie trying to cure him, only for it to not work, it would cause Ellie to maybe pause from it and be like, huh, well, my blood didn't cure that guy, so why would it cure anything, though? That didn't really happen in the show, but I'm not really bothered by that, though. But I thought that was a neat little moment that they did there.
They plant the little seed of doubt, which is
the
something
little
the
seed
game
of
didn't
doubt,
do. Yeah,
which I liked. And what was the moment I really liked? I do like that Sam picks up immediately that Joel was a father and I guess no longer, or was once a father, I guess.
Yeah.
That I really liked.
I loved the relationship. It made the ending even more devastating. Because we see not only is our Ellie and Sam forming a relationship and a bond, becoming friends, Henry and Joel are like, Joel, as prickly as he is, towards the end of that journey, he's like, okay, you guys can come with this. You're cool.
I do like in the game that Joel just absolutely hates Henry no matter what, or he doesn't like him. I got them mixed up again. Which one's which again?
Henry's the oldest. I'm pretty sure you had it.
I do like that he just does not like Henry at all. Though, like he beats up this guy a lot, from what I remember.
That's my point of Joel's kind of a dick.
Yeah, but like the bit where there's a bit in the game that I kind of wish they kept in. It's where at one point he takes Ellie and Joel's on his own, and then when he runs into them again, he's ready to outright murder this dude. So. But they didn't put that in the show, and I'm a little bit bummed out. But oh well.
So, Ryan, you were talking about Kathleen earlier. I guess this is the point of the conversation. We can kind of dive into that. One thing that I kind of really enjoyed about this season is that the main theme of The Last of Us was always love and family and the lengths you will go to protect them. That's been the theme of this story since the beginning. That's the theme of The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2. I think the introduction of Kathleen, she is a TV original character. She's not in the game. But seeing the length she'll go to for revenge for her brother, for whatever happened between them and Sam and Henry earlier in the show. What were your thoughts on them integrating that new story into the series? Because that's not anything that happened in the game, but it felt seamless, like a perfect transition.
Yeah, it really did. I haven't played much of the game, obviously, but I thought Kathleen, the character, like I said, I was cheering for her to go down, and that was not a commentary on the actress. I thought the actress did a great job. She made me hate this character, so she was doing her job splendidly. And when it did happen, I was very happy for it. And it really goes to show that Kathleen and David are just examples of how this world just corrupts those and strips you down to just your, like Jack said, your lizard brain level of humanity. All conscious is stripped away. All feelings of morality or basic reasoning are completely strip mined. You're just basically down to, have you wronged me in the past? Your ass is grass. And that's pretty much Kathleen's entire mindset in this show.
Yeah.
I enjoyed having that little that little added I guess subplot, as it were, though, because I mean, in that section of the game, there's that group running around in like that armored vehicle. They're just they're just an obstacle, though. But I like that it kind of gave them a purpose. Kind of felt like, this city's being occupied, so to speak. I do like the little setup of like, they pushed all the infected underground. I'm just like, oh, this is not going to have any ramifications or nothing bad will happen out of this, though. And then they just all appear at once, though, and it's like, holy shit. That I loved.
That was genius too, because that is something that's hinted at in the game.
Yeah.
Like if you read some of the notes and letters that you can collect, you find out there's an army of infected that was pushed underground.
I'm curious to know how they push them underground, though. You can't just point a gun at them and say, get over there, though.
Yeah, well, it's more of that the city hit underground.
Yeah.
And then one infected got in and infected everybody hiding underground. And then they couldn't get out because they weren't smart enough to. That's essentially what happened. And so I thought it was cool how they brought that back and actually get to see it here.
Speaking of, this is something that I don't really know how to feel about this, though. This is something that I really loved in the game. Like, when you look around and find all those notes and stuff like that, though. I figured that, you just read all those little notes, people saying things and whatnot, though. I figured that wouldn't be in the show, but it is one of those things that I don't really know how they incorporate it into the show. Otherwise, it would just be like Joel and Ellie stopping every 5 minutes to be like, hey, a note. Here's what it says, though.
It's one of those things that I don't think you can reference it once. Like Joel finding the letter that Bill left him is in a reference to Bill finding the letter that Frank left him in the game. But it'd be really annoying if every couple seconds Pedro Pascal has to be like, well, gotta go find bullets, gotta go find ammo. But yeah, I think incorporating the story of Ish with Sam and Henry and then throwing in an original character with Kathleen, I thought made for a really strong episode there. And even I like how it seamlessly merged with like the big sniper set piece and the bloater. That was, for me, one of the strongest like action moments of the show. Really, because it's probably the only big action set piece of the show.
And also, I was gonna say, I do like how it kind of plays that for me a little bit, though. Like you said, that is the biggest action set piece of the show. I was reading into it, though, that scene of like all of them at night with the 500 infected or something took like 2 months to shoot or something like that, though. It's not a very long scene, though. Maybe like 5-10 minutes at most, though, but like it took that long. And it is just the big action set piece, though, that you don't really have that many. The game is like that too, though. I can't really think of too many moments that are as big as that. Even just the sniper scene as is later in the game, to my knowledge, though. I mean, what do you think, Mike? I don't
know. The Last of Us doesn't have like big boss, like God of War's type of set pieces. They're very much you've got to go like Ryan was saying at the top of the show, you've got to fight 10 clickers. And that by itself was a big enough challenge to where if they gave you 2 bloaters or a Rat King, nobody wants to deal with that.
Not getting into part 2, but I am very curious how they're going to make that thing look in live action, though. But
I'm scared.
I just seen my mom coming down the stairs, and I screamed out, and she's like, "What the hell are you yelling about, Jack?"
I'm terrified.
Oh, let's talk about the giraffe and people endlessly debating if this thing was real or not.
This was so funny because again. I'm so glad that HBO released behind the scenes photos of this, because hold on, let me pull up the image. When I got my screener like 3 months ago now, this is what the giraffe looked like. This is what the scene looked like.
Yeah.
It's just blue. It was just blue. There was nothing there, but I'm like, okay, that's clearly a real giraffe. That's neat. But I had so many friends laughing because they thought the giraffe was fake.
I admit I thought it was fake too, and maybe because I've never seen a giraffe in real life. So
I think part of the problem. Go ahead, Ryan.
I saw one on the Kilimanjaro Safari at Disney's Animal Kingdom. but I'm with you guys. I thought like, oh, the CGI on this is pretty good. I was not expecting it to be real. So I mean, shout out to HBO. They did a good job on this one.
I think the issue and why it may have been a little weird for people is that the giraffe itself is real, but surrounding the giraffe, again, this is what the show looks like. This is what filming it looks like.
Mhm.
By having everything around it be clearly blue screen, it
Yeah.
probably just kind of aids in the, well, clearly they didn't get a real giraffe, so the scene looks weird type of
Mhm.
deal for some
Yeah.
people. That's my take. Like how the Spider-Man suit in Homecoming, it's practical in some shots, but CGI in others, and it kind of
Yeah.
blurs the lines a bit for some people.
It is kind of one of those things where it's like, because there's a oodles amount of CG in this show, like
Yeah.
just from everything, from like backgrounds to like signs to just everything. And it is just a case of like sometimes you really just don't know. But
Yeah.
I think it's funny. It is just one of those moments where you just like, I did feel a bit dumb when I said like, when I thought to myself, oh, it looked fake. But then after seeing the photos, I'm just like, oh, I feel dumb now. I'm like, well, why did it look off to me? I don't know. Like
That's what I'm saying. Like by everything around it being fake,
Yeah.
that may have aided a little bit in your
Maybe.
perception.
Yeah.
Giving yourself the benefit of the doubt there.
Though it's funny just looking at this picture here. I'm just imagining someone being like, well, yeah, it is a fake giraffe. It's just a head on a stick or something like that.
We never saw its legs.
Oh my God. But I'm glad they kept the scene in there. Because it's a very very iconic moment. I looked at my girlfriend, she thought it was cute. Especially after the it's like that in the game too, where Ellie's very quiet, and that's my friend walking around the back. Ellie's very quiet, and then they see the giraffe, and like Ellie's a kid. It's like, oh wow, I've never seen a giraffe before. So
She's never been in a car, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
I love this moment. I want to talk about the ending of this story, the ending of the game too, because
yeah,
it's one of the most controversial endings in video games, probably only rivaled by its sequel.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, you just finished at the time of us going live here. You just finished the show, like day of, right? So, I want your take on Joel's decision. I'm going to set everything up for everybody again. Joel and Ellie finally arrive to the Fireflies. I say arrive in loose terms. They eventually get jumped and drugged and dragged into the hospital of the Fireflies. And Marlene reveals that to create a vaccine, to create some sort of a cure, they're going to have to take the cordyceps from Ellie's brain, which will most likely lead to her death in the efforts to save humanity. Joel, of course, thinks that's a terrible idea, and he goes on a rampage, killing everybody who gets in his way, except for Laura Bailey, which is hilarious. And then he takes Ellie, and then he shoots Marlene, and then he lies to her at the end. Ryan, what were your thoughts when you saw this happen for the first time?
So I'm of two minds on this. On the one hand, I get why Joel did it. Ellie is his surrogate daughter. I understand. However, on the other hand, there is no way that this doesn't bite Joel in the ass in the next season, or however many seasons this does happen. And again, even outside of it, it's another liar revealed plot, and if I never see another piece of media with the liar revealed, it'll be 5 years too soon. So it grates me to no end. However, I am willing to see where this goes. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for me.
Understood. It's always interesting to hear somebody's take on this because, like I was saying before, this is something that I've lived with and have known about for almost a decade at this point. So hearing your take and hearing your reaction to that, it's always going to be really fascinating for me. My opinion on the matter is that I feel like in the context of the show and what the show has shown me, one, we didn't see nearly enough infected to make it even feel like we really needed a cure or for a vaccine.
Yeah.
Like we only saw one or two, and then we saw the giant horde in episode 5, and that was pretty much it. So I feel like that's kind of where not having as many fights with the infected kind of bit the show in the butt towards the end a little bit. But aside from that, in the context of the show, you may have not needed a vaccine, but also since in the game we don't know how Ellie or why Ellie is immune, I think that kind of makes Joel's lie a bit worse here, simply because we now know that Ellie is only immune because her mother was infected while giving birth to Ellie. And that is something that will never happen again. Like the idea of another child being immune is extremely rare. So this was like their only chance to actually do it, to find some sort of cure or vaccine. So Joel may have just doomed humanity, whereas the game, it was never as concrete, in my opinion. But this goes back to what you were saying before, Jack. I'm going to toss to you in a second. We have the moment where Ellie does give Sam the blood and it doesn't work. I felt like that was the show's opportunity to say, hey, it may have not worked anyway. But they don't really follow up on that. So that kind of puts me back in the spot of Joel is wrong no matter what. What's your take?
So I have two minds of this though. I just want to read a good tweet from this from Will, actually, William WFC, our good friend Will. Joel's actions are intentionally good faith, correct, and selfish and bad at the same time. This is the whole dramatic drive of The Last of Us when you break it down. It's not a case of like, I never saw it as this will lead to a cure. I always saw it as it doesn't matter what happens after this though. Ellie will die. Whether it makes a cure or not though. And I remember when this game came out though, and I was aware of like roughly knew vaguely what the game was about, its story and whatnot though. But I remember I had friends who said there was some survey done saying that if given the chance and they could do something different with the ending, they would have let Ellie die so there could be a cure. Which to me is a bit head scratching because like the whole emotional drive of the story is that, Joel already watched his daughter die in his arms though, and he's not going to let his, surrogate daughter meet the same fate, even if it means potentially giving up, even if it means, potentially ending the literal hell that the world is in. So
for me as a player, going back to like 2016 or whenever I played this game, I hesitated. In all honesty, you get to the moment where the game forces you to shoot the doctor, and I didn't pull out my gun. I just stood there. Like, is there any other way for me to get out of the situation? And I think that is the biggest thing of what, like, Joel killed all these innocent people. Like the surgeon, the nurses, the security guards, they all died to protect Ellie. And I think that's the, like Ryan's saying, that's going to come back to bite Joel eventually. We're not going to spoil if or how or why it does. But I think in the context of the story, as a player, that was like the hardest thing for me to do. Because, again, in the game, we are fighting hundreds and hundreds of infected. Clickers, bloaters, stalkers, walkers, whatever they are. We're fighting all of these things. And if there was even a 5% chance of putting an end to it as a player, I felt like that was the noble decision, the honorable decision. And I think the problem with how Joel goes about it is that Marlene says something, and Ellie, it kind of goes back to what Ellie says at the start of the episode. It can't all be for nothing. Tess, like Joel renders this entire season for nothing. Tess dies for nothing. Like Sam and Henry, they team up with them and watch them die for nothing because this journey didn't need to happen. And I think that's what makes the weight of this ending so crushing for me, because Ellie's robbed of her choice. She never got to choose if she wanted to go through with this. Marlene and Joel made that choice for her. And that is going to rear its ugly head later, but also it kind of puts Joel in a weird spot, especially when you just cut with Ellie saying, okay, and she just has to accept it. that's that's always been what was fascinating for me with the ending of The Last of Us and the potential repercussions it can have, because again, this thing didn't get a sequel for like 7 years.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Darren Mooney of The Escapist was talking about this though. Because like I said, there was that feeling of like when people played the game, it's like, oh, if we could have the option though. But when you're actually like watching the show, you're just watching it. You're not sitting, you can't vote where it goes or anything like that. You just have to accept it, so to speak, though. So, but to me, I'm not really like, I think it's interesting this debate has been brought up again. Because I think it's one speaks of the material, though. It could have been that I sort of was thinking this in my head, though. It could have been very, very easy to just kind of lead the audience to believe that, yes, Joel is absolutely 100% doing the right decision. You should be behind this all along, though.
Yeah.
I see it as more Joel is doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. And I don't really want to get into part 2 because Ryan hasn't played it. So, but
we'll get the team back together. Brandon will be here. We'll talk part 2 when the season airs.
Yeah. But one of the things that I like about part 2, that it actually goes very much headfirst into Joel's decision there, and that's all I'll say for now.
Yeah. It's always going to be a controversial ending, whether you think one way or the other. It's just, again, I think the show does a really good job of beating those themes into your head. Like episode 2, Tess's dying wish is save who you can save.
Mm-hmm.
Joel couldn't save Sarah. He couldn't save Tess. He couldn't save Sam or Henry, but he could save Ellie. And that's what goes into his decision at the end. And that's, again, where I feel like the show and Pedro Pascal's performance makes this a lot easier to get behind than the game did. Because, again, like Joel goes on a bigger rampage. He kills more people. And he's just an unlikable dirtbag for the majority of it.
I mean, to make another Mandalorian comparison, it's like in episode 3 of The Mandalorian, when like he gives up Baby Yoda, he gets his reward, but then he's like, "No, I need him. No, that is my son. There, I'm not letting you take him."
More violent on Joel's part, but yeah.
And very similar thing. They're using another parallel there, using the DNA of a thing to do another thing.
Pedro Pascal's just living in a simulation at this point, I tell you.
Where's the 2 cats when you need to see them? But I think it's and then I saw some report. It said it's like Joel probably did do the right thing because scientifically speaking, this wouldn't make a cure. I'm just like, shut up. That's not the point of the scene.
There's this New York, I think it's this from Time Magazine. It's this story, and it was like scientists are in an uproar over The Last of Us because Joel would have killed Ellie just by unhooking her from the anesthesia. They can't properly wake her up. She would have died. It's like, guys, shut up. Where were you weeks ago? We were talking about the mushroom people who use echolocation to move around and like bite you and infect you. Like, where were you for that part?
I will say I do like. I forgot to mention I do like the sort of hive mind-esque thing that the infected have. I think that's actually pretty unique.
That is cool.
Yeah. But anyways, you were saying.
No, that was it. We reached the end of the series, but was there anything we missed that you wanted to double back to before we called this a show?
There was a certain cameo in the what was it? 6th episode, I think it was. When they run into Tommy's town or whatever, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's heavily implied, who this character is, though. But like, then Neil Druckmann was playing coy about it. It's like, well, it is and isn't. So, yeah.
That's a thing that we can't touch on.
No, we can't touch on.
It's a part 2 thing, but we had that. We also had Laura Bailey cameo, who played Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. That's just a name. I'm not telling you anything about Abby, but she was in the final episode, which was kind of cool.
Didn't what's his name? He pointed that out immediately or something, or.
Yeah, Brandon watched that episode, and we recorded our episode 9 review a couple days before the episode aired because we had a screener for it.
Mhm.
And he immediately pointed out, like, that was Lawyer Bailey. I'm like, how did you know that?
Wow, that's funny.
That was great.
Um,
Ryan, was there anything that you had?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm looking forward to season 2. If we could get it tomorrow, I'd be a happy man. But I gotta wait. So say la vie.
Yeah. I will say this though about one thing I do like, and there were many great Twitter threads I was seeing this about. And sort of what you were saying earlier, Mike, about this in many ways being like a director's cut of the Last of Us game. There's a lot of moments where it's directly setting up moments that will just eventually happen in part 2. Not just in terms of the story, but in terms of the characters, though.
Yeah.
Specifically, a moment even in the first episode where like Ellie witnesses Joel just beat to death that one guard or whatever. Though she has this look on her face though that just. It's hard to explain though, but it translates to something that happens in part 2. So
it's a lot of parallels and setup that they do here that I think is really, really cool. It's again, I think Neil Druckmann, like just the other day, they asked him about The Last of Us Part 2 received so much feedback or backlash. Do you care about fan response? And he just said, I don't care.
I don't care. I love that. That's the kind of answer I need to hear more often though.
I think I fully believe.
Take that, J.J. Abrams.
What was that, right?
Based move by Neil Druckmann.
Very based, yes.
Base, no cap there whatsoever. But
common Neil Druckmann W.
I will say this because he directed the second episode. He avoids the because it was a very well directed episode. The second episode, he avoids the Dave Filoni issue though of going from one medium to the next though. Whereas if you watch all of Dave Filoni's episodes of The Mandalorian, they're the worst ones. He has no idea what to do with a camera. Yeah,
that's something like. It's weird because I like the first time he directed an episode of Mandalorian, I thought it was okay for a first timer, but by season 3, I would feel like he would have evolved a little bit, and it just kind of didn't.
No,
but that's
Neil Druckmann comes. It's just like, yeah, here's how you do it. Here's how you create tension. Here's how you create, pacing and scale and everything. It's like, oh, you're doing a very good job at this.
It's almost like he directed actors before when he was making the first 2 games.
Yeah.
With the motion capture.
Yeah.
I wanted to say though, with that comment of him saying he doesn't care, I feel like on the whole he doesn't care about fan response, but he probably did at least take feedback on, hey, we're gonna introduce some of these themes or ideas a little bit earlier by putting them in season 1, so when they pop up in season 2, it's not as shocking. I feel like The Last of Us Part 2 went a completely different direction that fans anticipated, and that was like a culture shock a little bit. So by spoon feeding some of those themes and ideas into season 1, that'll make the transition a little bit easier. So I think he took some feedback, but he's not going to rewrite the whole season. That's ridiculous.
It will be yeah, sorry Sam. Ryan, you were saying?
I was just going to say, I have no problem with Neil Druckmann's direction so far, where he's going to take the show. In terms of this whole thing with fan response and all that, in the words of George Carlin, it's all bullshit and it's bad for you.
Yeah, because it's very easy to be like, to take that at face value, though, without ever thinking like, is this coming from a place of I can't speak. Is this coming from a place of good faith and genuine, or is it just like trolls on the internet, though? But it will be neat to see how they adapt it, though, because part 2 is a very big game. It's enormous, both in terms of story and just the scale, though, and just its narrative. Like it timeline wise, it jumps all over the place, though. So yeah, so I could easily see some bits just being like entire episodes. I could see some sections being an entire season of television. So
that's what Craig Mazin actually said already. He's the co-showrunner. He was like, "Yeah, the game is so big, we're gonna have to split it up." Yeah. So If they're like they were only renewed for season 2, let's pray that HBO isn't stupid and they'll give them season 3. Just let them film it all at once because it's massive. They're not going to get through that story in one season.
But I'll just have to keep our heads to the ground and see what happens, though. I'm very curious who they're going to get to play certain characters, though, especially Abby. That's a role, we'll say, for now. So,
good luck to the actress who has to play Abby. That's going to be a hard role to.
Please make sure she has no social media. Just,
yeah. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. A lot of people are saying Florence Pugh, and I don't think she's got the physicality needed for the character of Abby.
Someone actually pointed out, though, there was this one actress that Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann were following on Instagram, I think it was, who also follows them back and all the various social medias. And it was like, okay, she's tall, blonde, and buff, but I don't know. And thank God thank God in the final episode she didn't have a cameo or anything like that, though. One of those things that would have been very
post-credit stinger.
Yeah, no post-credit scene. That's something that would have been so easy to have done and just be like, all right, and see you next time. But
you didn't want them to do the Avatar: The Last Airbender thing. We're at the end of season 1.
You see Azula or whatever.
Azula, it's time to go after Zuko, and there's like camera pans. Next season.
It's like, no, it adapted the first game, and that's all you really needed, I feel. So
they stopped exactly where the game ended, which I thought was really
basically. I will say the final episode was definitely, it needed like 5 minutes of breathing room. It just kind of goes bang, 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 like point to point to point. A bit too fast, I felt, though.
I want your take on this, Ryan, as somebody who didn't play the game. For me, I really felt not having gameplay. Like a lot of those breather moments is or between the cutscenes, it's you killing the doctors essentially. And so as you're going through stealthily doing all these action scenes, then you cut to Joel in the car with Ellie, and then we get that big moment at the end where he lies eventually later down the line, and it makes that ending hit really hard as a gamer, as a player. The show, like Jack was saying, doesn't really have that space to breathe. How did you feel that watching it? Did it feel like it was moving a little too fast?
It was a little suspicious considering how short the episode was. Because episodes like earlier in the season were nearing an hour. And I know this is HBO, but consider the fact that I think this one was close to like 40 minutes. I could be wrong.
It was like 43, I think. Yeah.
And bear in mind, a good first chunk of that is just the stuff with Anna, which just wasn't in the game. So,
yeah. So I
probably only like 30 minutes, maybe at most. So when you think about it,
it was definitely more brisk. That is what I will say. And it was the whole montage of it, like Joel. Here's what really happened. It definitely felt very montagey. So I definitely can understand where you're coming from. It wasn't that big of a problem for me personally, but again, I'm like here, you all are like over here in terms of like experience with this material. So just for me and what I know, it was fast, but I didn't mind it too much.
Not too fast to where it was distracting. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. I think if like maybe anything, the whole thing of Marlene saying, we've got Ellie on the table now, you can go now, to where Joel is walking down the hall and then takes out the guards and like, oh really, no time to process this then, huh? Well,
I do love the one thing I do love about Joel's massacre is I just love the sound design on that, though. All you hear are the gunshots and his breathing. You don't hear anything else, though.
Yes, it was very good. So I felt the length, but I wasn't overly distracted by it. Again, it was a bit of a 50-50 for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think for me, again, this is weird because it's a hint of deja vu because I've seen this ending a billion times. I don't know if I would have ended it the same. That's just me. like you end it with Ellie saying okay. That's exactly how the game ends. But I don't know. I felt like it didn't flow the same way for the show to end there. Like maybe it should have ended. Maybe they should be back in Jackson with Tommy, and she says okay. Maybe that would have made it feel like an easier transition for me. I don't know. I'm not going to try and rewrite it. I just know it felt a little bit weird to me.
It is one of those things I noticed where I noticed this with episode 8 as well, though. Like what I said about live action cutscenes, there's a lot of moments that are ripped right out of the game. Pretty much note for note, though. And like, yeah, the final chapter is like the final chapter of the game. You know, there is gameplay there, but like a lot of it is cutscenes and a lot of it is just what we saw in the TV show. Not that that's a pacing problem or anything, though, but like it just kind of speaks of, I'd imagine they just probably came to that and be like, there's not really a lot we can add to this or even like go further with or anything like that, though. It's like,
yeah,
you just kind of had to get to the point, though. That's what I was sort of meaning in that, like, it just felt a bit like, it kind of just felt like they almost just wanted to get it over with, though, so to speak, though. Yeah.
This kind of goes, I don't know if you guys were able to listen to the Last of Us podcast.
I listened to a few episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hosted by Troy Baker, and it's got Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin there every week. And one thing that Craig Mazin said when they did the finale episode, he said, "You are a moron if you change the ending of The Last of Us." He's like, I was willing to change everything, add Bill and Frank, do Left Behind, take out the spores, do all this extra stuff. He's like, but I would be a fool to change the ending of The Last of Us. So therefore, that's why these last 2 episodes are almost shot for shot from the game, because he's like, yeah, I'm not messing with perfection. It loses all of its punch if I change it, which I respect.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. Not that I wanted a different ending or anything like that, though. I don't know. It just needed something, just a bit of breathing room. Like even just little things, like when they get captured by the Fireflies or something. It just happens. Like in the game, it's a bit different. The 2 get knocked out, and then Fireflies just so happen to run into them. So yeah. So I don't know. I don't think I could word it properly, though. It just felt a bit like just too fast, I felt. But not that it definitely, but it still landed the emotional beats, I felt. So yeah.
Yeah. It still hit all those beats that we needed it to. It's just one of those things where, again, I don't know if I'm on. No, it's not even me speaking as somebody who knows the game, because Ryan said he kind of felt it a little bit too. I just don't know, what do you add, like those extra 5-10 minutes that we want? Do you just add an action scene, or do you add more dialogue? Like that's where I kind of struggle with. I don't even know how you fix the pacing issue. That might just be The Last of Us is too short of a game to make it satisfying.
I couldn't really think that my dumb brain is saying, like, the only thing I could see maybe adding is just stuff that just maybe even a few characters, just stuff that will eventually happen in part 2 or something like that, though. But again, I think that would just kind of take away, like he said, it would take away from just the ending as is, though. So
yeah. That's valid. Guys, it's been a great show. We've been here for over 90 minutes already, and we've barely scratched the surface of how awesome this show actually is, which is insane. But thank you guys for joining me for the season finale recap of The Last of Us here on Beyond the Clickers. It's been a blast. Jack, where can people find you?
You can find me on all my many social medias at Captain JJB84. That's it on Twitter, YouTube. I'm just getting tired here. Sorry. Twitter, YouTube, not Facebook. Instagram is Jack Conrad94. Xbox and PlayStation, also Captain JJB84. And I'm currently in that weird point where, like, I have 3 projects scripted, but I don't know which one I'm gonna do.
We've been there.
Yeah. Yep. And this kill me, I guess, though. I don't even have the time to work on them anyway. But I'm working on something. I'll say that. So
He's got something cooking. Just wait. You'll get there. It'll get there. It's great.
does he know what he was cooking?
To be continued, right? We'll find out one day. Thanks again for joining us. Ryan, my co-host, the Chat After Daily. Where can they find you, man? What you got coming up?
So people can find me Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and my YouTube channel at RyanCam20. I want to thank everyone who did watch it for watching my video on my horrible experience watching Creed 3. Basically, 3 teenagers fighting over an icy. It was not fun. I documented all of the video, and it kind of blew up. So I appreciate those of you who did check it out. Regular content of mine, I'm on the road to John Wick Chapter 4. I've been covering all the John Wick movies. I've done Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Chapter 3 will be dropping this coming Sunday. And then this coming Wednesday, like always, will be my podcast, Life in the Movies, with my co-host, Jacob Martin. So if you have not checked me out, please do. I'm nearing 350 subscribers, so not like just throwing that out there.
Go subscribe. Let's get to 350 by the end of the day. How about that?
Hey, that's not bad.
Not bad, right? Guys, thank you again for joining us for Beyond the Clickers. This is a show that we've had a lot of fun with. We've had so much fun with Brandon, of course, being a mainstay here. Brett, Miro, hope you're doing great with the baby, you and your wife. You are amazing. Thanks to Destiny, Christian, Rin. It's been a blast talking with all of you in the chat, in the comments. Jack, Ryan, for joining. It's been amazing. We can't wait to do this all again in season 2, whenever that is. Hopefully, very soon. Yeah. And Jack, I can already hear the grumbling. There's going to be an episode that I want the entire dang panel here because of how chaotic the entire culture is going to be.
That's there's going to be like 3-4 episodes about that though. So, it will be interesting to see, and I very much hope part 2, when they adapt it, is also kind of a director's cut of part 2 as well. So that'll be neat to see.
It'll be so much fun to see and heartbreaking, but we'll get there. Until next time, guys, as the great Savage Starlight always says, to the end of the universe and back, endure and survive. Peace.
Peace.